The desert stretched endlessly under a dying sun, its golden light swallowed by the approaching night. Rango's boots crunched against the dry sand as the wind whispered across the dunes. Ahead, a strange sight broke the barren horizon. A faded circus tent, its red and white stripes torn and frayed. It stood alone, as if abandoned for decades, yet it swayed gently like something alive. The ropes groaned in the wind, and somewhere deep within its shadows came the faint, unmistakable sound of children laughing. It was not joyful laughter, but slow and strange, echoing like it was trapped inside the fabric of the tent. Rango stopped, in his tracks, staring at the tattered entrance, his instinct screaming to turn back. But the desert was empty behind him, and the night was closing in. Something in that tent wanted him inside, and he felt it pulling at him with invisible fingers. Inside the tent, the air was heavy with dust, the silence broken only by the slow creak of a single spotlight swaying from the ceiling. Its yellow beam cut through the darkness in a restless arc, revealing fragments of the circus that once was, faded banners, shattered seats, broken instruments. Then, drifting lazily across Rango's path, came a single red balloon, its glossy surface catching the dim light. His eyes followed it upward until they caught movement in the distance. There, half shrouded in darkness, stood a figure tall, thin, dressed in the rotting remains of a clown costume, its head tilted unnaturally to one side, the white of its painted face gleaming faintly, and a red mouth stretched wider than it should have. Rango's breath caught as the figure stepped forward, the shadows seeming to close around it like a cloak. The clown emerged into the light, and Rango wished it had stayed hidden. Its eyes were to hollow pits that reflected a glint of cruel amusement, and the red smile carved across its face seemed almost surreal, as if the paint had been etched into flesh. Its collar was frilled but stained with something dark, and its gloves were worn thin, revealing fingers that were too long to be human. The air seemed to grow colder, the shadows stretching unnaturally toward Rango's boots. Then the clown spoke, its voice sweet and melodic but soaked in malice. "Do you want to have some fun?" The question hung in the air like a trap. Rango's hand inched toward the revolver at his side, yet his legs felt rooted to the floor. The clown took another step closer, and the light behind it flickered like a dying candle. Rango spun on his heel and bolted, but the tent was no longer a tent. The corridors stretched and twisted in ways that defied sense, every turn leading to another hall lined with sagging red balloons. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, and, from their fabric, pale hands burst forth, clawing and grasping at his clothes. The sound of the clown's laughter bounced from wall to wall, coming from the left, the right, and somewhere impossibly close behind him. Rango's hat nearly flew from his head as he darted around a corner, but there it was, the clown, already waiting, its head cocked and its smile wider than before. He stumbled backward, heart pounding, and took off again, no matter how fast. He ran, the tent's endless maze kept folding in on itself, the air smelling of old candy and something rotten. He burst into a chamber filled with mirrors, hundreds of them, each towering from floor to ceiling. His own reflection stared back at him in every direction, but he wasn't alone in them. The clown was there too, behind him in one mirror, beside him in another, its movements out of sync with reality. In one reflection, it pressed its gloved hands against the glass, the faint sound of scratching filling the air. Rango turned, but there was nothing there. Then one mirror cracked, with a shrill note, and from the fracture a pale arm began to reach through. Rango backed away, but his reflection didn't follow. Instead, it smiled with the same hideous grin as the clown. The maze felt smaller with every breath, the air thick and cold, and somewhere among the reflections, the real clown waited. The mirrors vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, and Rango found himself in the central circus ring. All around him, dozens of balloons floated in the air, each swaying as if in an unseen breeze. The clown stood at the far side, its grin trembling with anticipation. Then, one by one, the balloons began to pop, each burst revealing the clown's face changing, teeth growing longer, skin splitting, eyes sinking into darkness. Rango drew his revolver, his breath slow and steady, and fixed his sights on a single balloon shaped like a heart, hovering in front of the clown's chest. He fired, the sound shattering the air, and the balloon exploded in a spray of red mist. The tent groaned, its fabric tearing apart, the ground beneath them cracking, as the clown's smile twisted into something unspeakable before vanishing into the chaos. When the dust settled, Rango stood alone in the open desert, the tent reduced to scraps of fabric fluttering in the wind. The night was breaking into dawn, the first light painting the horizon in pale blue. He exhaled slowly, holstering his revolver, but the silence was not complete. A faint hiss of air drew his eyes upward. There, drifting lazily into the sky, was a single red balloon, its glossy surface catching the morning sun. For a moment, he thought he saw something reflected in it, a shape, a face, a grin. The balloon floated higher, carried away by the wind, until it was just a dot against the lightening sky. And then, so faint he could almost believe he imagined, it came the sound of that same cruel laughter, promising this was not over.